I'm just curious from your perspective, which areas do we sort of need more research on? Obviously, the progressive side for drug development has been known, but where else do we still need a lot more to learn about, and we're still a little bit unsure about within MS?
Well, I think some of the exciting work that's come out this year regarding the role that Epstein-Barr virus may be playing in perhaps triggering MS, I think it's fairly compelling. But I think what we don't know is, does the infection maintain the ongoing inflammatory activity that we see? Does it just sort of set off the disease, or is it actually the virus itself, reactivation of the virus, playing a role in some of these relapses or progressive disease? And whether or not targeted therapies, which are now being developed and being tested to identify or eliminate B cells that are infected with Epstein-Barr, for example, or autoreactive B cells that are related to Epstein-Barr infection, could we have this really targeted kind of therapy that could really make a difference in the ongoing disease activity? So these are unanswered questions, but very exciting to think about, sort of a new approach that we'd be taking. The way I see it is we're getting more specific in terms of how we are impacting immune responses. So we, started out globally with a lot of sort of immune suppression that was generalized, but, with the monoclonal antibodies, we're really able to sort of sculpt the immune responses in a way that's beneficial. And this, of course, leads to fewer side effects and fewer risks and better treatment. So I think we're still moving along that direction for really, if we could just get those autoreactive B cells instead of taking out all of the CD20 B cells, that I think could be quite, earth-shaking or groundbreaking.
We're still learning a little bit more about MS. We're still learning within the neurology space how aging affects us, as well as how sex may affect us. So what is our current understanding of how aging as well as sex, how that affects the progression of MS? And also, to that point, has it changed, or have we understood anything differently over the last 10 to 15 years or so?
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of work that's being done on aging, not just in MS, but in neurodegeneration in general. And of course, the biggest risk factor for developing progressive MS is age, and progression seems to develop in relation to age, as well as, I might add, comorbidities. So that's another area where we've learned about this interaction between the two. And then gender, it's an autoimmune disease, so affects women twice as often or 3 times as often as men. That's also the case for things like Alzheimer's disease. So, and a lot of these, I think a unifying theme is that we know that inflammation is playing a role in all of these areas, and that inflammation is different in men and women, and that may be part of the reason, or part of some clues to the understanding of why women are impacted more than men in some of these disorders. Now, we do have this notion that in MS, at least, that when men do get MS, they tend to do more poorly than women. So women have a sort of a better prognosis, if you will, after their diagnosis of MS. So there's obviously some hormonal issues and probably sex chromosome things that are important. And, a lot of work has been done in those areas to better understand that. But clearly, there's a lot more to be done. I think the idea of measuring chronological and biological age is something that's really interesting and potentially useful. And we also know that there's some interventions that might actually maybe turn back the clock a little bit. And I think it's very telling that a lot of these interventions are the same across all of these disorders: exercise, eating well, getting enough rest, being social, and stress reduction, and so forth. So there's a lot of commonality there. But I think at the end of the day, the thing that I think is so interesting is the immune system seems to be at the forefront of a lot of these processes.